What is going on, everybody? Scott and Rachel with Turnaround Marriage coming to you. And today we want to talk about the reasons that your church, your friends, and probably your family are probably not able to help you turn your marriage around. Okay. And so Scott and I have been working with Christians for years. And in the last few years, especially really diving in deep and helping really struggling Christians turn things around quickly. And here's what we have noticed. Number one reason we've noticed everyone has an opinion, right? So when you talk to your sister and then you'll talk to your mom and then you talk to your pastor or maybe your pastor's wife or that favorite elder that you like, or, your neighbor or your best friend, everyone's going to have an opinion. They're going to tell you what is going to help you get out of pain the fastest, probably, right? And they're going to side with you and they're not going to level with you. And here's the thing, most all of them are going to be telling you things that help lessen your pain. But the number one thing they're not going to be telling you to do is to follow God, right? They might be telling you, give him an ultimatum or make her move out or, tell her not any, absolutely, we're not doing that anymore. Or, whatever the opinion is that they're giving you, most likely what they're not doing is helping you to hear the voice of God, right? And that's the most important voice you have to hear if your marriage is struggling and if you've been hurting for a long time and there's been a lot of conflict and there's been so much heartache. Number one, you have to be able to listen to God's voice and his heart, right? Absolutely. And if all these opinions and voices are speaking to you, it's really hard to hear that, isn't it?
It is. And it makes it really confusing. It makes it really difficult. And we talk to people all day long. And this is a sad theme that we hear all the time. It's like the family and the friends, they're not telling them what God is telling them to do. And they know that. But it's like, well, I want to honor my father and my mother, and I want to listen to my sister, and all my friends are saying, and I might be feeling this way, but everybody else is saying, so probably I should do that. And that's so sad because in the midst of the maybe the biggest season of struggle in their life, if not one of them for sure, they're in a place where they're like, I'm so confused because I really want to honor God, and they're all saying to get divorced. And that may not be what God is telling you. And certainly God's word is pretty clear about that. Now, we're not talking about in cases where there is, abuse and there's clear reasons for divorce. We're not talking about that. But when God has given his marching orders and everybody's telling you the other thing, it can be so confusing. And that's really one of the wonderful things that our clients tell us over and over again. Like when they work with us, they also get connected with other people that we're working with that are also contending for their marriage. And it's like, oh, thank the Lord. I have other people that are going the same way, and it's going towards the Lord and his purposes for them. Yeah. So that's a really big thing. But here is the thing that I really do believe. One of the biggest idols in America, and certainly in the church, is the idol of niceness. It's like I'm going to be nice, and Jesus was nice because I saw him on TV that way, and everybody's supposed to be nice, and that's what godliness looks like. Oh, it's just so nice to see you today. And we don't speak the truth in love. What about confronting one another's sins? Yeah. What about being honest with your sin and sharing that and confessing that to one another? Well, that doesn't really fit into the church in America anymore. And the truth is, I was a pastor for 20 years. And I was caught up in it too. And I didn't realize it back then.
Right.
Not always, but a lot of times. Because here's the truth. People are coming. They're coming in droves to their pastor. The pastor is dealing with so many things. And in the back of the mind, he's either worried about them going out the back door, or he's worried about getting warm seats filled up. And it's very difficult to speak the truth in love. And so even the church has a hard time a lot of times speaking the truth in love because they're so distracted. There's people coming and going. People don't treat each other right. And there is the culture of niceness that's taken over where it should be the truth in love. And I'm just being honest about that. That's what it looks like so often. Don't you agree with that?
100%. 100%, because there's a difference between being kind and being nice, right?
Absolutely.
We are called to being gentle and kind, and yet niceness is sort of this veneer, right? Where it's like, oh, bless your heart. Don't you look, you've been working hard at going to the church where we're iron sharpening iron. And the trouble is the church in America has largely been missing out on that. And so that is a big problem. That's why it's pretty tough to get help.
It's so true. And that's not who Jesus was. Like, do you think he was really nice when he was turning over the tables in the temple? No, there's money flying, probably chickens running every direction. Like
Was he nice to Peter when he called him out and said, "You're going to deny me 3 times before the cock crows"? It's like, wait a minute, that wasn't nice, but he needed to hear that.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely.
And so what I would suggest, and what I really want to paint a picture here today, is to say that it's very difficult to find in the church or even among your friends people that are going to tell you what you need to hear.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. And what you need to hear is sometimes the hard things. And when you're struggling, ironically, you want to hear the hard things, but they're not equipped. They're so used to like coddling you, and they'll be like, "Oh, poor you. That's so sad." Oh, and they turn you into victims. They do. And then you begin to blame your spouse because everybody's aligning with you, and your spouse's friends and family are aligning with them. And it's just not the way it should be, because we need to go back to godly principles, biblical advice, and lining ourselves up with what the heart of God is. Getting the marching orders from God. And that is where we try to come in. Like, we really want to help people powerfully, not just here's how to pass the stick with communication in your house, which is what most of the marriage helps are out there doing. And it's so much like, here, you just need to be tougher. And when she asks for help, don't give it to her. There is so much drivel out there, so much unbiblical stupidity that's in the marriage space. And people wonder, I've tried all these things and they don't work. Well, of course they don't work. We are sons and daughters of the King. I don't care what the world's doing. We are God-honoring Christians, and we want to align ourselves with the heart of God, regardless if our parents or our families are like, coming to be Satan. Get behind these, Satan, right? Like, they're speaking the voice of the enemy instead of the voice of truth, which is what you need if you're struggling in your marriage right now. You were just speaking.
Scott,
go ahead.
Scott is fired up today.
I am.
And he just got off the phone with a couple, and it's like, Scott, what you're so good at is you're so good at calling out the best version of people and calling them forward, not in this I'm going to beat you up way, but in this drawing forth of helping them to step into who God says that they are, and helping them to hear the hard truth so that they can change, right? And with friends and with family and with churches, a lot of times that's just not happening, right? It's not to say it's impossible, because here's the thing, like, you really do have to have the ability, if it is like your pastor's wife, or a friend, or a sibling, or a cousin, or anybody, you have to have that ability to be able to take off that hat where it's pretty close and put on a different hat, a mentor hat, right? An expert guide hat that says, okay, now this is go time. I'm going to come at you in a different way, in a different relationship, right? And I know one of our amazing clients, she just reached out yesterday. She was having a really, really tough time. And I called her up, and we were chatting. And what was so amazing is, I didn't just coddle her, and I didn't just, say poor her, but what I did was I helped her remember the truth of who she is and the truth of what she can do, right? And I helped her to see the difference between her owning her state and her stuff, and the way she's been showing up to fight honorably for her marriage, and also being able to separate that from how her husband has been showing up and the choices he's been making. You know what I mean? Because here's the thing, sometimes there's sin, there's brokenness, and there's marriages that come to the place of possibly being irreparable, or where there is biblical grounds. And you've got to have an expert voice and a godly wisdom to walk somebody, to help them discern what that is, and let them be able to hear the voice of God for themselves, right? And so here's the thing, like what a powerful coach can do is, what we do is we really help to challenge the thinking, the patterns of, how we've always responded, or how we've always seen the world, or seen our marriage, or seen our spouse, and be able to shift out of that and get a different perspective. And a different perspective, everything can change, right? It
can. And what I loved, and you're so good at what you do too, Rachel. And what I love about what you did in that moment is, like, she had this belief that she has a lot of emotion, and that's something that's wrong with her. And she's probably carried that for a long time, which is not uncommon for a lot of women that we work with. The belief that I just have these emotions and they get the best of me, and I'm just an emotion. I just need to stuff them down. And if she were to go to a lot of family and friends, they might say things like, "Oh, poor you. You are emotional. Yeah, that's just how you are." And that's not what you said. Not at all. Like, you turn that around and you're like, what you need to see, what you thought is your weakness, is actually a wonderful gift of God.
It's one of her superpowers.
Yeah.
Because when we feel deeply and we have a heightened sense of emotion, we can actually use that to connect deeply with people, to have a level of empathy, to have a level
Yes.
of care and concern and compassion that maybe wasn't possible before. And so she was really encouraged to see that this thing that she's carried around that has gotten in the way, it's like she can harness that and she can use that as one of her superpowers. This is one of the unique ways she's wired by
Yeah.
God. Yes, that can be marred by sin and we can get
Right.
the best of us, but also we can, with God's help, turn that around. And so, our heart for you guys is, if you've been struggling in your marriage for a long time, and if you're either fighting and the conflict has escalated and it's just, you come home and it feels like you're roommates and you just ignore each other because you don't want to fight, or maybe it's where you've just grown apart over time. There's been hard things that have happened between the pandemic and maybe loss of loved ones and a lot of hard things stacked, and it's just like, now all of a sudden I don't even know you anymore,
Yeah.
or maybe there's been broken trust. There's been just like, you haven't had your needs met. And so you've gone outside the marriage, or your spouse has. No matter what that situation is, you need biblical help. If you're a Christian, you need someone
And
to walk a
wisdom.
journey
Yeah.
with you, to be able to help you see what you can't see, and to help call you forward in that honorable version of yourself, the version of you that God says that you are.
Yeah.
Right. And somebody who can take off that other hat and put on that hat, so
Yeah.
that they can contend with you for your marriage.
Absolutely. And if you're feeling, and maybe you are beat up, but if you're feeling beat up and you're believing that there's something, all these things that are wrong with you, and you're just living in negativity and you don't know how to get out of that, there's no solving your marriage. Because here's the thing, this is the truth of what we want to say. Like, there is no magic pill to save your marriage. I don't care what you try. There's no therapist. There's no retreat. There's no book. There is no magic pill out there that you're going to take that's going to, everything is fixed. It doesn't work that way, because here's the truth. You have to save your marriage. So many people are just, well, I'm waiting on God. I'm just waiting on God to fix him. When the truth is, you have to step into action. God never, ever, ever calls us to just sit on the wayside. Always we're called to action, in the Old Testament and in the New.
Yeah.
Yes, God works, but he didn't part the Red Sea and say, sit there, or bring elevators for them to slide them across. They had to step into action, which is what you have to do as well. And that is so important. What we want to do is equip people to not look at things incorrectly first about themselves, but also to step into the truth of who God says, and with biblical wisdom, start taking strides for things to change. And when that happens, it is incredible how God works, how he shows up, how he meets you there, how he answers the prayers of your heart, how he performs miracle after miracle. But it will not be sitting on the sidelines. Mm-hmm. That will not be how it is. So what we want to urge you to is that what we want to equip as many people as we possibly can with the Lord's help to save their marriage.
Yes.
And it's not going to work if you're welcoming in the voices that are in your family and friends, and maybe even in your church, where they're encouraging you down the wrong paths and keeping you locked in victimhood of poor you. Mm-hmm. Never going to work. So, somebody asked us the other day, can you guys help your friends? I thought that was an interesting question. What would you answer, Rach?
Well, absolutely. We have helped friends and family. And that's the beautiful thing, because we do have that ability. We've learned how to take that other hat off and put on the hat of expert mentor, of transformational coach. And absolutely, we can. I know sometimes it's shameful if you don't want to reach out, if you've been struggling and there's been a veneer of a marriage. And it's like, if anyone knew what really goes on at home and how I really felt, they would judge me. I would feel ashamed. I couldn't face them. Here's the thing, like, when we welcome people in, we don't even need to know the whole entire story. What we do is equip our clients to help them and give them the tools so they can work things out. They can deal with their heart before the Lord. They can learn to renew their mind. They can learn to shift their heart, their emotional state. They can learn in their nervous system and in their body how to show up differently and out of this, fight, panic, flight, mode into a mode of calm and confidence and compassion. And,
Yeah.
and we're able to do that. And so, if that's you, whether you know us or not, or whether you've been following us for a long time, if you've been struggling in your marriage, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? We get to have the front row seat to the most amazing transformations, watching cold, dead marriages come back to life, watching affection
All
and
the
laughter
time.
come back,
Yeah.
watching husbands warm up to their wives when they've been cold and closed off, watching wives soften when they had decided, that's all, I'm not going to do that anymore with you. And it's like when a husband shows up differently, when a wife is ready to, whoever's ready to go first, guys.
Mm.
And maybe both of you are ready now. That's ideal. But if not, stop waiting for them. You take the first step and go ahead, and we're going to show you our masterclass. It's the 5 simple shifts that Christians can make to turn their marriage around. You can go to turnaroundmarriage.live and watch that. It's the best 35 minutes of your life. It has helped tens of thousands of Christians be able to reframe why there is struggle in the marriage and also what you can do. And we have helped hundreds of Christians learn how for them to save their own marriage with God's help and by his grace. Okay, so you can go to turnaroundmarriage.live and we'd love to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly, it's not always couples that we work with. Sometimes it's an individual. And, Rachel, you recorded an amazing interview last week with Sarah.
Yes.
So powerful how with the Lord and with our program, everything was able to change. And they went from getting divorced to
yes,
back in love again and committed again. Like, it's amazing
Yes.
the transformation that's possible when even one breaks out of the cycles and aligns with God's truth. And, how many times a week do we say, I don't need the story? Like, we say this multiple times a day because we don't need the story. And that's why our model is very different than everything else that's out there. Most traditionals, it's like, here, lay out all the problems. Let's go back. And how bad did that hurt? And how did that hurt you? And like, you got to talk about all that as if there's going to be answers there. There's not. And then by the time you're done with this session, yes, now you can go home. And you have this big pile of mess that you're supposed to deal with. It just simply doesn't work. Now, we're not saying you need to gloss over things and just skip over things. Yeah. What we're saying is, and we want to equip people for them with the Lord's help to be able to do it at home together without another couple, another person having to jump into the middle of it, like jump into that mess. Now, sometimes it's a little bit necessary to some degree, but rarely do you need the whole story, which goes to say again, that we've got a very different way of doing things. And because of that, we also get uncommon results too. So yes, check out turnaroundmarriage.live. And anything else?
Yeah, let's take action. As Scott said, it can be both of you together right now, or it can be one of you. If one of you is ready to get help, the marriage can change with one person showing up differently. You don't have to listen to the friends and family they're trying to make you feel less bad. Yeah. You can get real biblical help and real effective help. And so go to turnaroundmarriage.live and we will see you there.